Good morning and hello. This is Max Smith with 501c Agencies Trust. Welcome to this month's webcast, Creating Dashboards That Rock. Today's webinar or webcast is brought to you, as usual, by our friends over at 501c Agencies Trust. We've been in the nonprofit unemployment business since 1982. We offer services such as human resources consultant, reemployment services, claims management, and a number of money-saving options for 501c3s related to their unemployment expenses. Many of you on today's webcast are already working with us, and we appreciate you doing so and look forward to working with you more in the future. Before I introduce our speaker this morning, Jackie, I have a couple of things to go over. We'll be taking questions throughout, but Jackie's going to hold, our speaker today is going to hold them all until the end. So as you have questions, please send them over to us. We'll get them situated for her, and we'll present them to her at the end. Today's material and dashboards is a pretty hot-button topic. I know there's going to be lots of stylistic and strategic and such questions. So just go ahead and shoot those over to them. We'll get them formulated for and get them over to her. Everybody will be getting a copy of today's presentation following the end of it. You'll get a copy of the slides. You'll also get a recorded copy that you can share amongst your friends, neighbors, cousins, and coworkers. So those materials are coming. And as usual, we do these once a month. We do about 50 a year for our clients, and we do one a month for everybody else. So if you have any ideas you'd like us to tackle, just let me know, and I will recruit people like Jackie, and we'll get it done for you. So today's speaker is Jacqueline Tissot, or Jackie. She has about 25 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. She founded her JMT consulting group a few years ago, and before that she was a CFO and controller for a number of nonprofit organizations. So she's assisted nonprofits for years on all aspects of their financial accounting services, and she's also kind of a technology management consultant as well. She currently serves on a number of nonprofit boards as well. Jackie also had a little bit of a scheduling conflict this morning, so she's at an airport today presenting for us. So fortunately, she was able to get this in, but there may be a little bit of background noise. We apologize for that, but Jackie's a pro. I don't think anybody will have any trouble hearing. We've already done some tests this morning, but it will sound a little bit like she's at a quiet cocktail party. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand that to Jackie.
Thanks, Mac, and thank you everyone for attending, and I do apologize for the background noise. So this topic of dashboards is super popular, and I think part of it is because everyone is looking at numbers all the time, and you're getting swamped by them. And, if you're like most organizations, was probably you get a monthly packet of information, and you might have, a balance sheet or a statement of revenue expense and kind of budget versus actual. And, the question really becomes how helpful are these reports to the readers, because there are just a lot of numbers, and most people are not finance people. So it might be just way too much numbers. Next, Mac. Next slide. So hence why the dashboards have come into play, and they're so popular, and rightfully so. Basically the key thing with dashboards is they provide quick, easily digestible information on key metrics and financials that each organization, the end user, reader, is interested in. And, so those metrics are what we commonly refer to as KPIs, or key performance indicators. And that's really what I want to talk about today is, how do you identify what might be a KPI and then create a dashboard that will really resonate for your organization. So let's start with what is a KPI. Next slide. So a KPI is a key performance, commonly known as key performance indicator, and it's a type of performance measurement. I actually like to call it a key predictive indicator because the whole point of it is to help your organization not look backwards so much, but predict what may be coming down the future. And so they help you sort of to identify the success of your organization or a particular activity, project, a program, other kinds of initiatives that you might have. And also, dashboards should really be about, who is the user, the reader, because you really want them to resonate, the information that's on them to resonate for each user. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about the why, and we can go to the next slide. So, this particular, I just want to share, I met with an organization not too long ago, and it was very similar to what I hear with a lot of our clients. We have over 2,000 clients, and we only work with nonprofit organizations, and it's a very common tale. They had a new CFO who had been brought on board, and it was the third one they'd had in like 5 years. And he was struggling to get a handle on how the organization was doing, what information was available, and, where could he start? And so, there were lots of different systems and lots of different processes, and he had loads of Excels. And, we talked about dashboards and what he might do there. Next slide. So, I actually started talking with him about what I call perpetual performance improvement. And, typically financial statements are a great tool, but they're like a snapshot. And it's just like at this moment in time, how are we doing? What are we doing when it comes to the numbers? And actually, you really need to think about beyond just this snapshot in time, the what. It's really, so what does this information mean? What is it telling us? And even more importantly, what do we do with this information? How can it change how we go forward, or do we need to make changes? And, some of it could be, for example, a program, and that program might be running at a deficit, but that's a conscious decision that the board has made because that's a very important program to the delivery of the mission of the organization. So you really, when you think about KPIs and dashboards, you really have to think about more than just a financial statement and a snapshot. Next slide. So, this is what we are talking about when we come to the whole concept of, KPIs. It is, what I really like about them is you want to try to make them as real time as possible because you want them to be a continuous health check on how your organization is doing. And that's what a dashboard really helps you to do. You also have visibility that you're bringing to, your particular initiatives and your programs, which is very important. You want to track progress. Part of it is we expect to, if we're a Meals on Wheels organization, we expect to, support and feed this many homes, and how are we doing on that? And, it's about not just dollars, but the metrics, and that's really a key important piece as well. And they're a, warning alarm, so if your organization is going off track, you can sort of see it, and it's front and center versus just a report all the time. Next slide. So then the next question, of course, is, okay, I get why it's important, and I sort of understand the principle behind it, what we're looking at. So how do I actually get started in terms of looking at KPIs or thinking about KPIs? Well, let's talk about the next slide. So the key thing around KPIs is about visibility. And, when you really want to understand how you're doing, you need to see as much as possible real-time data. And data means, as I mentioned previously, not just dollars, but metrics. And you're talking about all the different areas, financial, of course, but your program area metrics, your fundraising especially. So when you think about the KPIs, especially around the program area, you really want to sit down with your program managers and senior management and your board and talk about, what would help them to really see what is going on in the organization. And then last, but certainly not least, is, the information needs to be in a format that will resonate with the reader, and that's where the dashboards come in. Typically, we're used to getting financial statements, which are columns and rows of numbers, and that is not going to resonate with the typical non-finance person. Next slide. So I like to call this the SMART method, and I always tell clients that they have to be simple. And here again, if you're talking to your managers and program directors, they can tell you what it is that they're looking at because they're already looking at them. They have to be measurable. As I give the Meals on Wheels example, that's a typical one. Children served, members, they have to really align with your organization's mission. So if you are a housing organization, as an example, you want to look at the properties that you have, the number of constituents you're providing shelter for, how often they're moving through the program. So you really want to look at your programs. And I mentioned before, and I keep on repeating this one, relevancy to the reader. It really has to resonate with who's going to look at this information. And then, of course, it's got to be timely. I can't tell you how many times I speak with program managers, directors, interim management, and they say, well, I get a monthly packet, but it comes 3 or 4 weeks after the month ends, and it really doesn't have any information that's valuable for me because it's too far gone, I've moved on. And so you really have to look at figuring out how to provide information that's timely. So let's talk about the next slide. So what is the typical process when you want to think about KPIs and your dashboard? You want to look at simple. You want to start very simple. Identify 1, 2, or 3 items that you want to get visibility to. Determine how is it that they are currently being tracked and viewed. I'm sure, they might be pulled into an Excel spreadsheet or something. So you want to look at what's already being looked at. And, you want to look at how could they be presented so that you can really measure effectiveness. And that's typically in a trending graphical presentation, not a snapshot presentation. And especially when you're looking at the type of person you're sending the information to. A finance person, it doesn't have a problem, as I said, with financial statements, but non-finance people, they're in a different place. Also, you want to be very collaborative in working together with the senior management, your program managers, and development and fundraising. You really want to work with the different groups as well. Okay, next slide. So we created this little tool here to help our clients sort of identify and work through developing KPIs. It was a simple, form, and it basically says, this is what we want to look at. Here's the department or recipients that it's going to be going to, how often it would be updated. Is it a trending, so over a number of years or over a number of months? And, as Max said, you'll get a copy of the presentation, so you'll actually be able to see this and, look through it yourself. And we do have a Excel version of it, so if you would like more information, just let Mac know and we can get something to you. So let's go to the next slide. So the key point about dashboards, and I always caution people when you think about dashboards because everybody is talking about them now. But the key thing about dashboards is you don't want to have a tremendous amount of information on a dashboard necessarily. I always use the example of a car, an automobile. If you go into your car, you're in your dashboard. Typically, you've got there's only 4 dials you're looking at. Your speedometer, do I have enough gas? Is my car going to overheat? And then RPMs, and a lot of times people don't look at RPMs. The thing is, you don't want to have too much information, and you want to have dashboards that give you the information and encourage, you to think about the information that's presented, to ask the right questions. So not just a snapshot saying, oh, this is how we are, and a finished answer. You really want to think about dashboards as what is going to help the reader to help your organization move forward. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk about some examples of, what we see most often on a dashboard and presentation. So here again, they shouldn't be super involved. If a person has to read through something, that's not going to really resonate with the reader. So you need to make it something that resonates with the reader, and they're able to quickly scan it, look at it, and see and understand what it's saying. You need to be able to, of course, maintain it. And this one's really key. If you don't have a system of some kind, then this is going to be a challenge because if you're manually trying to maintain it and then you're waiting on a month-end close or numbers, that's going to be difficult for you. You absolutely want to include both dollars and statistical information side by side. And the reason for this is because, if your organization gets a $100,000 grant and you serviced 500 constituents, and another organization gets the same $100,000 grant and they service 1,000 constituents, well, then the question doesn't become, oh, the organization serving 1,000 constituents is necessarily better. The question then becomes, what is the difference between the 500 and 1,000? What is the 1,000 telling us? Is it the right number? So remember that, the idea of the question. And in a trending analysis, you really want to make sure they trend so you can see what the dips and spikes are, because this is really key to understanding, is this typical behavior that happens over the 12 months, or is this an unusual dip or spike? And here again, causing you to look at it and ask questions, what's going on? And then, of course, having the right KPIs that really fit with your organization. Even if you only start with a couple, it's better to take the time to identify what the couple might be and see if they're really used and they resonate and they help. And if not, then move on and see what would be better. Next slide. So on the financial management side for your organization, there are 2 that I always tell organizations you should absolutely have right up front and center. One is what we call a quick ratio, and it basically says what your ability is to pay off your current debt. It's a very simple calculation. It's simply your liquid assets, your cash AR, divided by your current liabilities. Very straightforward. And here again, if you do a little analysis, you can go back and run it at month end for each month over the past 12 months, and you can see how, what's our trend on this? Are we normally running 1-to-1? Our current liquid assets are flat and equal to our current liabilities? Are we running 1.5, 2? So that when you see a dip, you can identify you can see it and wonder what's going on. The second one on the financial side is the current ratio. And basically that is telling your organization, your senior management, what is your ability to pay off your short-term liabilities. And that's basically just taking your current assets and dividing by your current liabilities. These are very easy, quick ratios, and they are very important because they really give visibility to, the financial solvency, if you will, of your organization. Next slide. So, a lot of organizations, they will just simply put these at the bottom of their financial statement. And, that's fine. It's not pretty, but it's fine. It's not my favorite way of doing it because, as I mentioned before, I think it's really important to include trending. This snapshot might not, really tell you anything, because if you had 12 months rolling history, you might have had a steadily downtrending, ratio, and that is definitely something that's important to understand and have visibility to. So I'm really a proponent of the trending. Next page. And of course, we have the cash management side, hugely important. Cash is king, and that's, for every organization and company, for-profit or not-for-profit. Certainly, you should have a graphical presentation for the cash balances in bank that you have in the bank. And here again, trending. And you should also have it by, if you're a contract or grant-funded organization, you have restricted funds, you should be tracking it that way as well. You should have a line of sight to, your restricted dollars. And then the operating reserve, this is very difficult for many, many of our clients. We have a recommendation, 3 months of, operating reserves equal to 3 months of your annual expenses. Very few of our clients can do that. Even if yours is 1, the key is to have a goal and try to monitor it. And the same thing with the number of days or months of cash on hand. It goes to that, is it a month? Is it 2 weeks worth of cash on hand? It's really understanding that. Next slide. Okay, so then we have what I like to call our operational dashboard. And basically that looks at 3 particular aspects. It looks at, program from a program basis, fundraising basis, and what we call operating reliance. And so, when we talk about program, basically, and this is part of, what every organization knows, you try to keep your admin expenses below 15% or below 18 or 20, whatever your number is. And so this basically, it puts front and center, not just at year end, how are we doing on this? And it's a very simple one. It's just your total, program service expenses divided by your total expenses. Then we have the operating ratio, and basically that gauges if, you pay all your expenses from your program revenues and what percentage of your program revenues cover your expenses. What percentage of and there's a couple of different permutations of this. It could be what percentage of your expenses are covered by program versus admin, what percentage of program expenses are covered fully by program revenues. So there's a few different computations here in terms of, how your revenue is coming in and what expenses it's covering. And then, of course, we have the fundraising side. If your organization does fundraising, really understanding how efficient your organization is at raising money. And the higher the number, the more efficient the fundraising. And that's very straightforward. It's unrestricted contributions divided by the unrestricted fundraising expenses and overhead. So, these are just very high-level types of items that, from a financial perspective, I always tell organizations it's important to have. And even if you did do this only, once a month as part of your financial packet, hopefully you have one, which I started with, these could be part of that packet. Next slide. So, of course, the most important one for organizations is the program dashboard. And, that's because an organization's mission is its reason to exist. And so when you look at a program-related dashboard, you really want to look at metrics that are specific to the programs that you have within your organization. And here again, the trending is extremely important. And it really is totally dependent and unique to your organization. So, I mentioned, like Meals on Wheels, we have, clients Meals on Wheels, and their metrics are all around their meals, the delivery of the meals, the type of meals, age groups they're delivering to, neighborhoods they're delivering to. You have, I mentioned the, homeless, shelter. You might be a membership organization, and it could be metrics around your members, all different kinds of things. They really need to be linked to your unique organization, and your program managers, directors, and senior management, they know what these are, what they're looking at to see is their program effective. And, your fundraising development area will also can often be very key in this in providing information, because they're going out trying to raise the funds, and funders want to know this information. So they may have insight into what these are as well. So let's do next slide. I mentioned the fundraising dashboard, nice segue into it. And typically on the fundraising dashboard, these are some examples of what we've seen. Of course, the total donations received, and if we're ahead of estimates or, on target or not. Are your donations growing year over year? What's the average size of your donations? The percentage of, if you have pledges, the percentage of them filled and versus, not filled. How much is the cost of each dollar raised? I talked about that one earlier. And, of course, donor retention is really key as well. Next slide. So I want to share here some examples of some of the, dashboards that we set up for our clients, and, just give you some ideas of what can be in there. Next slide. So this is a, sample dashboard that we have, and basically you'll notice that it's primarily graphical in nature, lots of color. Each one of the components is, really looking at a different aspect of it. And you'll notice that, we have a combination of different pieces. So, we have one report-looking component, and then we have our charts, and then we have what we call performance cards. And the performance cards are, where you can get percentages and alerts and things like that. And here again, it really is dependent on the solution or software that you have. As I said, a lot of organizations don't have the ability to produce dashboards like this. And so they'll try to create something simpler using like Excel. And, that's okay. But the key is you don't want to create more work for yourself or create something that doesn't really get used after, you can't update it, and it's not timely, and you don't want to go down the path there. Next slide. Now, this particular one is really directed at a controller. So here you'll notice there's a lot more financial looking information that's there. We have a statement of revenue and expense, and we have a statement of, financial summary, which is the balance sheet. So you'll see there's more information that a controller would really be interested in. And that's the piece that I want to reinforce here is it really is based, the information should really be based on who the reader is going to be and what you're hoping the dashboard and the information will allow the reader to do. What's the goal of even having a dashboard? Next slide. So now this one here is an example of a board member dashboard. We actually have organizations that have really created dashboards that are real-time and allow their board members and their CPAs to go in and get snapshot views of the important information that the board member is looking for. So, of course, the board members are looking for, key information like what we were talking about, the program efficiency, the admin expense, is it 15%, is it 20%, how fundraising is doing, and, more basic kind of statements, how are we doing budget to actual, and, that's the other thing, even with statements that you're going to put on your dashboard, the key here is that they really be, really designed for simplicity, because even a financial statement, you really don't want to go into a lot of detail, so you really should sit down with your board and executive management and say, we can get you detailed information, but for this initial view, what would be of value to you? Next slide. Now here's an example, again, of some, metrics. This particular organization, they wanted to know, how many meals they had served over the period, year over year, and what that represented in the number of clients, unique clients. They have a lot of volunteers. It was very important for them to track how is their volunteer doing. And, overall, at a very high level, how are we doing on program expenses? Are we consistent with our budget, or are we consistent with the prior year? And, they could look at these and see immediately we're serving more clients than ever, we're serving more meals than ever, but we don't have enough help. Our volunteers are down, and our expenses are, up. Maybe they're up because, well, certainly they're up for the cost of serving all the meals being up and the clients being up. Maybe they're up for payroll because, we have fewer volunteers. So here again, you want to look at really what's important for your organization. Next one. And this is an example of, again, more on the financial side, the CFO, where, here again, we have someone who's very financial, very number crunching, and so, they're looking at it, again, from efficiency. Overall, how's the organization doing at a very high level, overall administrative, overall program efficiency, is our revenue, program revenue equal to or matching to our, overall program expenses. And often this number, is in the 70% or the 75% or whatever, because a good portion of the general fundraising and contributions are underwriting the programs. And understanding that and what that number should be is part of what a dashboard is supposed to provide you. Okay, so next slide. And here again, I think we have a repeat of the slide. This is a controller slide that we had shown before. So is this maybe one more? Okay, so I think we have a repeat on some of these slides, so keep going next. Sorry, Mac. Yep, next one. Okay. So as Max shared, this is going to be recorded. You can also, as I mentioned, we have the Excel sort of template for creating and identifying key performance indicators, and we'd be very happy to share that as well. And if you just have any general questions or whatever, you can feel free to reach out on that as well. And so now let's hear any questions.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So we do have some questions, and just to repeat what Jackie said, if you need, everybody will be getting a copy of the slides. If you want a copy of that KPI identifier in the Excel format, you can just email me back. Most of the emails you get about the session are from me. And also, there's a post-webinar survey, and there's a comments area in the bottom of that, and you can just put, Mac, send me the Excel spreadsheet, and we'll compile a list and send that all out probably in the next 24, 48 hours for everybody. So we do have a couple of questions. And I'm sure you get this one a lot, Jackie. Amy wants to know, how do you roll something out like this? If you're presenting dashboards to a board for the first time, they've not gotten a lot of paperwork in the past, what's the best way to softly get your board up to speed with what they're about to see?
So this is a great question. So the first thing I would do is I would actually communicate, and I tell our clients this, I would actually communicate with the board for their input and, talk to them. It's like marketing, anything in life, right? You're explaining to them what it is about KPIs, what they are, why they're important, and why you want to do it for your organization. And you're going to ask for their thoughts and input about what they would like to see, because your goal is to provide them additional information. Now, sometimes you get feedback. A lot of the times you don't. So then the second step is that once you, get out that initial, hey, this is something exciting we're looking into. It's very important with nonprofits. Then the second piece is, if you don't get any feedback, which often is the case, then I recommend that you provide them the one or two KPIs that I've recommended, for example, here, or some program metrics, something that you think will resonate with the board. And certainly if you're an executive director or controller or something, you have that information, or you can ask a board member for it. And then you can, produce it for them in like a draft form with a little explanation. And if or you go to the board and you present and you tell them, this is information we're trying to provide to you. Here's why we think it's important. And actually, this is what it's telling us. We're in a very good cash position. Our liquidity has remained consistent over the 12 months. And for a board member, that kind of stuff really resonates with them.
Great. And how about the reverse of that? How about a board that's been inundated with a lot of information? They're getting too much information and you want to simplify it a little bit. Is it basically the same conversation but in reverse? While still trying to present them with what you want them to see? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you're going in and you're saying to me, there's so much information here. And one of the things that we've realized and understand is we really want to get you the information that you want in the format that we think will really help you. And so we're going to consolidate this down, and we'd love your input on that. And here's some examples of what we're thinking of.
Okay, perfect. And of course, another question I know you always get, you're obviously using some software packages for your examples. We have a number of questions about, could you recommend the software? Could you recommend a price point? What might be too much to pay? What might be too robust? Can you kind of get into the software recommendations for everybody?
Sure. So technology, as everyone's probably, can appreciate, has come so far. And so, there are so many options available now. It's mind-boggling. And but one of the things that we really caution organizations about is really understanding what your organization needs, and the size of your organization. So we look at the size of your organization, your annual operating budget, what kind of information you're currently getting or not getting, what the challenges are. And then that allows us to make a recommendation, because we work with a lot of different softwares, and it's not the kind of situation where you should go in and, we're getting bombarded with software vendors sending us, emails. And, you want something that really is nonprofit specific. That's the biggest one, I would say, right out of the gate. The budget always really depends on the organization, the size of the organization, what you're trying to do, if it's just like a dashboard tool, a reporting tool versus, you'd really like to get your accounting system updated. So here again, you can feel free to go out to our website. We have loads of information. I think there's also an ebook out there about looking at software in general, things to look for and everything. So if you go out to our website, jmtconsulting.com, there's, as I said, loads of information out there, and because there really is a lot of choices, and we always caution, because we only work with nonprofits and we understand the budgetary constraints, we really always try to caution our clients to be, educated buyers.
Perfect. I know that's a question you can't give an easy answer to.
Yeah, because there's so many options. That's the thing,
yeah,
and so many price points. Yeah, I mean, we have organizations that are very small, $500,000 annual operating budgets, up to very large, over $300 million annual operating budgets. So you really want to sort of understand, what your organization needs and what your budget is and everything.
Okay. Now this question might also have to do with the size of an organization, but logistically, does one person own the dashboard process? Or is it a collaborative process with a group or a departmental head? Or how is that typically? Can you give us like a small, medium, large example of how they handle the dashboard process internally?
Sure. So typically, the finance team owns the dashboard. That's been our experience. Typically, your finance team owns the dashboard, and you're the one that creates it and works with the other departments. And I happen to actually like this aspect, because I think it's really important for the finance team to become a very vibrant part of the organization, not be just basically there and in the back office kind of thing and not part of what's going on. It allows you to get out in front of your organization and talk to them and be part of the strategy for your organization. And I think that's like really important. But with all of these softwares, you have to figure it's going to be somebody's going to own it, whether it's finance or another department. Somebody's going to own it.
Okay, and I'm sure that this kind of relates to another question. That probably helps relate to the best methods to maintain them and update them, as if one person has ownership or one department has ownership.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. All righty. Well, I think we have exhausted our questions. As everybody can see, we do have another session next month on the 1st of November. We're going to tackle cybersecurity again. We did this last year. We're going to do it again this year with some updated information. I know there's been a lot in the news recently, so we do have some updated strategies for everybody to consider, especially for the nonprofit sector. So if you could join us for that. Jackie, thank you very much, and I hope you have a safe flight. I guess everybody got quieter the longer you talked, so you must have had an audience around you there.
Yes, I think I actually did. I chased everybody away.
Well, that's the pro in you. You knew how to do that. So we appreciate your time today. Have a safe flight, And everybody have a safe rest of your week. We'll get you those slides and Excel spreadsheets later this week. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.